welcome to the show Allowed to Talk. And on the show today, I'm continuing to talk about the book that I wrote a few years ago. The title is Marriage, Mind, Funk, and Mindfulness. And it's a book about infidelity and adultery and what people do and can do to that hurt you, and they don't do it personally to destroy you, but what they do, their actions can create a lot of sorrow and misery for other people and cause post-traumatic stress response and responding to what your life is like as a child. That's a book I wrote other than Marriage, Mind, Funk, and Mindfulness called, I said yesterday, Where the Sidewalk Ends, but that's a poetry book. I made it Where the Sidewalk Stops. My granddaughter Olive and I were walking in the ballpark in Carl Junction, Missouri, and I said, look, the sidewalk just stops here. I said, I'm going to name a book that, Where the Sidewalk, I said it ends. Then I found there was a poetry book called Where the Sidewalk Ends, so I couldn't use that, so I used Where the Sidewalk Stops, Where the Sidewalk Stops, and the subtitle is Nurturing Your Inner Child. Because if you weren't nurtured properly as an infant and a young girl before the age of 6, 7, it's not going to happen unless you do it yourself. No psychiatrist, psychologist, or anyone's going to help you. You got to do it yourself. Talk to yourself. And if you weren't abused or neglected or traumatized and you're doing hunky-dory, good for you. And then, that's great. But if you have a problem with not being nurtured or validated properly, and it might not be intentional, they didn't intentionally push you aside, shove you aside, or ignore you, or tell you to be seen and not heard, go away, you have no say, and never tell you what's going on or what even death is, till you see death in a coffin. Not your aunt, I saw my aunt many years later, my grandmother, Grandma Walmer, my Grandma Bumberger, Bertha's mom, Grandma Walmer, in a coffin at a place, a big building. And I'm like, she's sleeping. I'm going to climb up with her. And it's no. You're the bad. I lived my life. I know exactly what happened to me. I mean, I don't remember everything. I only remember from like around age 4 up. But yes, the book called Where the Sidewalk Stops. I'm sorry. Yes, stops, not ends. Where the Sidewalk Stops, Nurturing Your Inner Child by Kay Dean, Kaydean. I recommend it because if you're struggling with your childhood or why you're so ashamed of yourself, you're very backward, naive, and you don't understand a lot, or you don't understand why the people are different and you think everybody should be alike and like you are, not because you're so wonderful, but that you just don't understand life in general. So, and why you're still acting like a child and having temper tantrums and screaming at people when something goes wrong instead of reacting logically. And you do have a say, and you don't have to conform and be like a nobody, basically. So Where the Sidewalk Stops. Then I wrote another book too, and I think it was Kay Dean also, because my nickname's Kate Nadine, so I use Kaydean, Kay Dean, as my pen name for who took my self-esteem. And I should have said who took my self-worth. I should have titled it that. But because I felt worthless most of my life, and I still struggle with that, but I'm 95% better. I'm doing better. I'm enjoying my life, singing, dancing, making music, having fun, trying to talk to people about it. And if I help one person, it makes it worth all my trouble. And I'm trying to sell this book, and that's why I'm talking about the chapters. It is on Amazon.com, and Kay Dean is my pen name, and the name of this book I'm giving you, Chapter 9, what it's about, and how people's actions can affect you as a child as you're growing up. You see stuff now as an adult from age 21 up. I've seen stuff, and some things really upset me and hurt. And but knowing at age 59 how there are people that have different disorders or things that from their childhood themselves could be going on in their heads. Narcissistic personality disorder, is one of them. And I have in chapter 15 of my book about being narcissistically abused. But this is chapter 9 of my book, Marriage, Mind, Funk, and Mindfulness. It's $6.99 on Amazon.com, and I get 35 cents per each book. So if I sell 200,000, that would be $70,000. So I can pay off my mortgage early, because I'm no spring chicken, honey. 67, but I have a 30-year mortgage. You know what that means? 97, I'm not going to make that. I want to pay it off. I'd like to pay it off in 5 years if I could. So 35 cents per book, Marriage, Mind, Funk, and Mindfulness. And then my other books, Where the Sidewalk Stops and Who Took My Self-Esteem. They're all good books. So yeah, you don't have to buy them, but thank you for watching my videos, liking and subscribing. And I'm going to discuss now chapter 9, the person. I called the person Aubrey with a B, A-U-B-R-E-Y, but her name is Audrey. So, Audrey was Darlene, chapter 3, sister. They were raised somehow in a veterans girls' home. I forget the name of it. It was in Carlisle, but some girls' home. And Audrey was the one who followed laws and didn't have a sex addiction. At least she resisted the devil and he fled most of the time. But when Darlene met Ken, my oldest brother, and she dated him for a while, and she got pregnant, and they planned the wedding. My mom catered it. I was only 1 year old when they got married, and then my mom was expecting a grandchild when I turned 2 in January. She had a granddaughter on January 31st of the year I was 2, so 1959. So, Audrey was the sister of Darlene, Darlene was the sex addict. Nymphomaniac is the word I heard when I was like 12 years old or less. I don't know exactly. I was young when I heard all these things being talked about. But Audrey was the sister, and she ended up, because after they had their 4th child, the 4th child was the one that my brother-in-law, Wayne, the wino, who drank and was drunk all the time, thought was his kid. So, but it wasn't. The youngest does not look like him, not even in the slightest, not even. But there was never any tests done. There probably never will be, but the truth is, I grew up around this. I'm not making these stories up. I add where they dated in my chapters and where they might have dated or got married, but I don't know all that facts. Because when my brother Ken, my oldest brother Ken, who's been gone for a couple years now, passed away. Darlene's been dead 40-some years, probably because of her involuntary manslaughter. She was murdered involuntarily back in the 1960s or 70s. That's a long time ago. But she was giving oral sex to a man in his truck at a lake or a dam, and he held her down, and she died. She suffocated. Talk about sin unto death, it happens to people. But Audrey loved Ken from when she first met him. And here's why I'm a little nuts from Audrey. Audrey lived on 9th Street in Lebanon, an apartment upstairs. Audrey's been dead and gone too, 5-6 years. I don't know all these years how long they've been dead and gone, but she's gone too. And she loved Ken, and I loved that she loved Ken, someone who really cared and loved him. I appreciated that. This was long after Darlene was gone out of Ken's life. They were divorced, and she might have even been involuntary manslaughter by then, murdered by accident. A little touched in the head, am I? Yes, I am. So I'm the one sent all the time with my brother Ken and his 4 kids, told it's not your dad, it's not your dad. There's not enough room for you here in this back seat of our car, our Ford Fairlane, white Ford Fairlane. He's our dad. It's our dad's TV. It's our dad's car. I tell him to plug the TV in the ground then because it's my mom's house. But we would, on Sunday afternoons, I think it was. Don't take my word for that. I don't know what day it was. I was just a kid. 9 years old, whatever. And they were not 7, 5, 3, and 2, whatever their ages were, younger than me. So we go to Audrey's apartment. We'd get pizza. We'd watch Walt Disney movies and the show, Walt Disney show that was on Sunday. So it must have been Sunday nights. But I'm not sure about that. But we'd go there and have a blast. Audrey was so kind and sweet to us. And Ken would go in there and we'd visit and have so much fun in her apartment upstairs, the second floor. And then all of a sudden, Ken says, no, you can't go. We're not going. No, the ride in there only took 10 minutes, and dealing with my mom's oldest granddaughter, I did. And we'd fight, and Ken would pull over on the way home sometime and say, I'm going to drop you off here if you don't stop fighting with my oldest daughter, with her. I won't say her name because she might be the one who wants to sue. I don't know. I know there's going to be lawsuit threats, but all I'm talking about is the truth. And I'm telling it from what I hear, from when my husband's sister laughs at people, when she is so outright overt, and so she's just all that and a bag of chips. Never married, but she's just all that. All right, let's go back to the oldest granddaughter of my mother's fighting. He'd pull over at the El Parado there between 11th and Mifflin, around there, around the 12th. Is that there? Is 12th Street and 11th Street, Lehman Street. Somewhere he'd pull over and say, I'm going to drop you off, Kate, if you don't stop fighting with my daughter, my oldest daughter. And I was terrified out of my mind. I really thought he was going to drop me off. I'm only 9 years old. But am I supposed to think like an adult? Yes, apparently, because I'm the bad. You know, the scapegoat is what it is. So Ken says, no more going to Audrey's house. Okay, why? What did we do? What did I do? What is so bad? He just said, you're just not going along. Well, 3 months later, my grandma Bumberger and Audrey are arguing that that's not Ken's kid that you're carrying. So she got pregnant. We'll add those up why we couldn't go along anymore. And she's always been in love with Ken, even when he was married to his first nymphomaniac wife. And she was nothing like that. Don't say Audrey was. She didn't turn out like that. Her addiction might have been food, because she was chubby too, like us, like I am. I'm a food addict. So no, we can't go in anymore. And now 3 months later, she finds out she's pregnant. And my grandma's on the front porch sweeping with a broom and says, that kid is not your brother Ken's. And I said, I think it is. I'm only, 11 by that time. And I'm like, I think it is. It all adds up. He stopped taking us. And she said, you will stop saying it. You have no business in this. You have no say. You're just wet behind the ears, kid. You don't know. And I'm telling you, it's not his. And they defended him like I was a piece of crap again. And for years this went on. She had this baby boy. It was a boy, Michael. And she would come to church and come to our house. And I think he was 9 months old. And I got attached to this kid. And now 9 months, she moves back up to the Carlisle area. And that's right there. I lost one of my nephews. She took him away because of my grandma Bumberger saying, it's not my brother's, it's not Ken's, it's not my grandson Ken's, it's not his child. You just are lying. You're not truthful. So she drove Audrey away. So then 10 years later, Audrey decides to move back in the area, and I talk to Ken and I say, you know it's your kid. So, and to make this long story short, Ken says yes, and he marries her. But there's a lot of years there where Michael was without his dad. And I know they made amends and everything is okay. But poor Michael, too. He's probably, almost 40 years old now? I don't know. Maybe almost 50 years old now. But this stuff, when it happens to you as a child, just gets in your gull, whatever that word is. And it's like, you think you are nothing, nobody. And you need to, like my book that talks about where the sidewalk stops, you need to nurture your inner child and say to yourself, look in the mirror and say, you are an okay kid. You did okay. You are not bad. You are a good kid. You are loved. I love you. And I should have told you. I'm going to tell you that this is how life is, and nobody's perfect. And I've made mistakes too. I love you, my child. You have to talk to yourself like the super ego, which is your parents, didn't do. Like my dad, not my mom. My mom would scream when the dishes weren't done all the time. But when they were done, she would just walk through like, yeah, it's good, but not say, oh, you did a good job or anything. My dad said he's going to punch me in the puss if I don't shut up and stuff like that. It's just, it affects you. You can get a psychologist or psychiatrist or a counselor to help you through it, but you still have to do these steps. You have to do these steps and say no to people. Don't be a people pleaser or a codependent, thinking you have to submit and do what conform to them to be loved, because you don't. You don't. No matter what was beat into your brain as a kid and said to you, like adults are never wrong. That's not true. They make mistakes, like my daughters do to their kids. I am human. I make mistakes. I love you and I want to help you as much as I can. And sometimes what I say seems harsh, but I love you and it's for your own good. Yes, you're right. Sometimes I make mistakes. I'm wrong sometimes, but I didn't get that as a kid. And with Audrey leaving, going back up to the Carlisle area, I can't remember the exact town where she knew a lady there. Because she moved with that lady with Michael when he was like almost a year old, but didn't see him till he was over 10 years old then. Just taken away from us. And I got close to him as a kid. I don't know about the other four. I can't say for them. But that it's their brother. And just like the Half family that lived in Sandhill, the Ratcliffes, those are half brothers and sisters of theirs. And whether, I'm sure the one I'm 100% too, Kenny looks like my brother Ken, little Ken, and Donna looks exactly like me. So yes, she's definitely my brother Ken's kid. But I'm not, and the youngest one looks like my sister Thelma, and the oldest one looks like the Hertzlers. So I don't know. Hertzlers? I don't know with the names anymore. But I just know this. People's actions can screw up your mind funk. And Audrey, a loving person, was in love with my brother Ken for years. She came back. And here's the best part, the wonderful, glorious hallelujah part. They got married, and they were married for a lot of years after that. And Mike is their kid. And I said it. Oh, so you were right. That's what you're making this video about. No, I'm making it about how people's actions can mess with your mind. Marriage, mind funk, and mindfulness. So I'm going to react logically. So I hope you're having a wonderful day, that you keep singing, dancing, making music, and having fun as much as possible.